Let's see. I'm gonna do a little voice thing. We're gonna be rock and rolling in no time.
No worries. It's all good.
All right. So I guess we can finally get started here.
Yay!
But Anthony, really, I mean, as you probably have gleaned, it's a side project for me. This is just something that I did at the start of COVID, and I was just looking for good fits for what I'm hoping to achieve with Saving Green, which is to promote little steps people can take to live more sustainably, but ultimately save money. Because I feel like if you push all these big ideas and people don't see the bottom line return right away, no one's going to make any of these decisions. Exactly. And obviously, stumbling upon that type of research led me to Teracube, and it just seemed like kind of just a wonderful project and something that I had read about, when the Generation 1 came out. And by that time, my mindset wasn't totally dialed in. And now I'm much more on board with the vision of the company. And I think that having learned more about it and, seeing the next iterations and how things have developed, it's really been quite an interesting thing and an enjoyable thing to watch this all unfold. So I guess, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're Australian, and I imagine tell us a little bit about, your
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My name is Anthony Tsim. I'm the co-founder of Teracube. Yes, I am Australian, but even before that, I was actually born in Hong Kong. I lived there for 12 years. Then my family and I migrated to Australia, and then I completed my primary school, did my high school there, university as well. And then after that, I worked there for a couple of years before Microsoft realized that I could be a talent to side with. And so they recruited me out there, and I came out here for a couple of years working at Microsoft, and then eventually left Microsoft and joined a friend of mine, started a consulting firm. And then many years after that one, eventually I met Sharad. So Sharad is the other co-founder, and actually the one who spearheaded the original concept of Teracube. And we met, and then eventually one thing leads to the next. I kept saying to him that, let's do something together, let's work on something. And so eventually that was the birth of Teracube. And, greatly influenced by his whole, mentality about being environmental and whatnot. And so, from what you may have read as well, Sharad is an environmentalist, a very enthusiastic one. And I think over the years, from knowing him and get to know him, throughout the years, I'm starting to feel the passion with, being environmental as well. I mean, obviously, I'm conscious and I know about it, but, that's just really on the surface level. Me being environmental, I think, he kind of gave me a whole new meaning of just being environmental, other than, turn off your lights, don't waste water, recycle your trash and garbage, right? But beyond that, like, there's a whole another side of, like, environmentalism that I never knew about. And I think, through him, I actually gained a lot of knowledge, and he really taught me a lot. And so with that, we were trying to brainstorm, ideas on businesses. Obviously, he has several successful businesses under his sleeves, and I have too. And so, like, if we would combine our expertise, we got to be able to do something, and let's leverage on what our strengths would be, and that would be like technology and hardware and e-commerce, right? So then we were like, okay, well, that's our core strength, but what is the value that we can add on top of it? And so, being environmental of him, he would be like, let's do something environmental and leverage our technology. All right, well, that's great. So it sounds like we're going to do environmental gadgets or computers or something. And so, him and I went back and forth. We did a bunch of research, And then eventually the net result is that, oh, smartphones. Yep, that's the one. Given the electronic waste, the impact it produces, we feel like this is a good area for us to enter and to make an impact. Because I think if Teracube does what we intend to do, then I think it really can help a lot of people to realize that we can help save the planet from producing electronic waste when people have to throw away their cell phones every several years just because they couldn't get it repaired or they couldn't get the spare parts or the software doesn't support it any longer and they worry about the security and then the privacy and things like that, right? So
yeah, I mean there's so many elements and complexities to starting a software and hardware company and getting the raw material streams and production values. I imagine it was quite a daunting endeavor building off of what Sharad was able to achieve with the Teracube One. What elements from your experience with your consulting, I guess, is that with the Exilio company, I think that I was reading about a little bit?
Correct.
I know you
so
have
Exilio, yeah.
Entrepreneurial avenues. How did you merge those two goals?
So Sharad, for example, so he owns two e-commerce companies. One's called Canivo and another one called Blue Rigger. They are a very well-known e-commerce supplier on Amazon, for example.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I am more on like truly the computer IT solutions consulting side of things. And so my expertise is mostly about the software. But what we then both realized is that my project management and business operational expertise starting to come into play as well. And then that's where him and I kind of joined force, leveraging his e-commerce and his software and hardware skill, my software skills and biz op and so on. Then we realized that, okay, well, one of us also need to figure out how to do sales and marketing. And so I actually have a dab of experience in that space because, I actually have a consulting firm that does sales and marketing as well. And so that's where I pick up the hat on helping out as well. And then eventually that's one of the areas that I actually end up focusing more on from Teracube standpoint.
Gotcha. So you're really bringing that aspect of the sales and electronic marketing and all of that, in addition to your technical aspects and your experience with some of the also technical and software side of things too. Because I know you worked for Microsoft and kind of headed the virtual labs, is that right? And or at least had a an important role to play there. I'm just curious what that experience was like and how the cultures were different between a large company like Microsoft and a smaller company, more on the green aspect of things with Teracube.
No, excellent questions. So before Microsoft, I've actually worked for several other companies as well, including IBM and McDonald's and a few others, mid-sized and small companies as well. The biggest difference between large enterprises versus small is that, with large enterprises, you're more in a kind of like a silo, if you will, and you're mostly, on task to focus on, certain areas and being great in certain areas. Whereas if you work for like a startup like Teracube or even Exilio, right? Often we would have to wear multiple hats. Even like our consultants, for example, our consultants would be, let's just say, a .NET developer. They wouldn't just necessarily just do .NET and that's it. They would have to do some databases like SQL Server, or they may have to do some cloud computing programming, and that would be like Azure, for example, or AWS or things like that. So it depends on the comfort level. So some people, obviously, they're more attuned to wanting to, to be great in a certain area and kind of like, hone in on that expertise. And then there are other people who like trying out various things and whatnot. For me, I'm kind of like the latter. And in fact, that's, you brought up the virtual labs of me, right? that I did way back when at Microsoft, that was actually the result of which, because I was actually doing something else at Microsoft under the umbrella of what they call MSDN. So MSDN is an acronym for Microsoft Developer Network. So
okay.
I'm in that group, specializing, educating, and promoting, articles and materials for developers around the world on how to leverage Microsoft technologies to write programs through Microsoft Stack. In that case, the virtual lab was actually a side project originally. That something I observed over the time that during my tenure at Microsoft. And then eventually I thought, okay, well, I think there's a great opportunity to develop a platform to broadly embrace how we can educate our developers at Microsoft on programming our tools, and makes it a much easier way for them to learn and absorb ideas and whatnot. And so that was a side project, then it eventually turned it actually into a proper program with, full funding, support, and what have you. And I did that for 5-6 years because of the success of it. And so that basically was like from after the first few years at Microsoft, and then eventually is all the way till I left. Was focusing solely on that.
It's a real fascinating story. I feel like, my professional trajectory has been very well prescribed. I'm a physician. I knew exactly what steps I needed to take. But a part of me is always a little envious of someone like you who really has the ability to wear all those hats and kind of think outside the box. And, you have enough of a foundational education, to take that, whatever your specific area is with software design or machine learning or anything, and build that and see deficiencies even within a business like Microsoft to say, well, we can take this platform and we can actually make this much more effective from an educational standpoint, kind of leverage this in a way that no one else really saw. And I think that's really amazing that you were so successful in so many different avenues, just reading about a little bit of your backstory and all of that. So I think that you seem like a perfect fit for like the role that you have at Teracube, where you can kind of not only build on your experience, but you have such a geographical footprint as well. I imagine you can probably take a lot of experience and connections internationally to make actual devices and products. I mean, I'm curious to know how a smaller company like Teracube can negotiate, I guess, and build off economies of scale to achieve the price point that you're able to get with Teracube, whereas it seems like a lot of other bigger manufacturers, phone manufacturers specifically, don't prioritize that as much, or maybe are looking at other things. I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to that too.
No, absolutely. I think you drew up a very, very good kind of like a point. You talk about the big phone companies, right? Mm-hmm. They would handle the cost aspect and how we handle our cost aspect, and how we manage to partner with someone from a manufacturing perspective, even for a lower MOQ, right? From our standpoint, I think one big difference is that Teracube being so small, we obviously are not like one of those big hitters where we have millions and millions and millions of dollars for like investing on marketing, right? Like our marketing is mostly like through Kickstarter, through Indiegogo, through Facebook ads, or what really more importantly is the word of mouth. The customer bought our original T1, what we call Teracube 1 or T1 for short. They're happy, and then they would tell their friends and families, and then their friends and family then come and buy our phones, and then the words kind of spread itself across the board. And some of our customers now even wanted to buy the Teracube for their kids or for their parents or what have you, and that's really like where it takes off. So from our standpoint, because the fact that we don't have huge marketing and budget, we don't have to create a big buffer, from a cost perspective. So let's just say my baseline cost, and then I'm adding this huge giant marketing buffer to make my, twice as much or 3 times as much, just so that I can generate the revenue.
I see.
Right. So from our standpoint, because our margin is very thin, and to be honest, I think their margin is pretty thin too. But majority of the fact is because they have to spend a lot of that for R&D, marketing and things like that. Whereas for us, the approach that we want to take is we want to enter the market quickly, while we were inspired by someone like Fairphone, for example, right? So Fairphone, we look at what they've done, and kudos to them. Go Fairphone. No, they are the pioneer, and make no mistake about that. And we are definitely one of the who inspired by their strong, desire and perseverance, right?
Yep.
Our approach to that we want to take, the goal is the same, but how we get there, we are taking a different path. Because at the beginning, Sharad and I sit down and say, you know what, we could try to do like what Fairphone did, raise millions and millions of dollars, spend a couple of years on R&D, coming out with ideas on, better battery technology, how to use more recycled materials and things like that, and blah, 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 blah. And then we're trying to come out with a phone. But then we were like, if we do that, A, we have to raise money. B, we're going to have to wait for a few years, most likely 2, maybe 3, to even come up with the first release. So then we said to ourselves, well, hang on a minute. There must be another way that we can try to enter the market quicker. And so what we did was we took a different approach. What we did was we did a lot of research and analysis with the various manufacturers in China. Say, we're going to find a phone that is already exists and has a proven track record. But from there, we're going to modify the design based on our spec. And from there, because it's think of it as more like tweaking an existing design as opposed to coming up with a net new design.
Right.
And so it's the time to market aspect and the research and development is drastically reduced. And so if you look at Teracube One, for example, we were able to come to market, we did it through Kickstarter last time around. This time around for Teracube 2E, we only did on Indiegogo. But last time around for Kickstarter, we were able to bring it to the market on Kickstarter within about a year. It's because we streamlined a lot of that. And then the roadmap we have is that as we go along this journey, we will incrementally increase the environmental positive impact that we're going to drive. And so Teracube One, if you look at it, how environmental of it was predominantly we were focusing on the 4-year warranty aspect, right? So we want to make sure the phone lasts, and we're going to retreat the designs of the phone so that it is designed to last for a long time, that we can support and we feel comfortable to support, and we the hardware and software to support. So that was the first goal. Coming to Teracube One was very much taking that same lesson that we have, plus the fact that, this time around we introduced more recycled material to be used. And we now, customers themselves can replace the battery themselves. And the case this time around is instead of the clear polyurethane plastic, this time around it's actually fully biodegradable plastic for the case. And so that makes it, so again, you can see that the transition from Teracube 1 to 2E is that we definitely introducing more elements from an environmental standpoint. And as we go on that roadmap, the journey, we will continue to fine tune and increase our throughput on how we would become more environmental and more conscious and more using either through technology or through just the ways of like introducing more environmental designs to our next generation or future product releases.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of really very fascinating points. One is that, I guess from a layman's perspective, we probably don't have an appreciation to how much money goes into marketing and advertising and how much that can affect your bottom line and your profit margins. So the fact that you guys were able to, kind of capitalize on the success of, the first generation word of mouth marketing and kind of keep your margins low, but also by having a concept that people are familiar with, which is basically stock Android in a functional phone in a traditional form factor with components that people have been using for years, that yes, now you can take that form that we all know and are used to, but make the environmental tweaks and modifications to achieve the ultimate goal, which is to put a phone that's reliable, that's serviceable, that is, guaranteed for a longer period of time because of its removable components. And then you add on, the other kind of green bells and whistles, like the box and the soy ink and biodegradable plastics and cellulose and things like that. So it's really interesting to see, because I think that, on the environmental side, it's very clear to see where the 2E came from. But looking at generation 1, it's like, oh, well, there's less RAM, and there's things that look almost objectively like kind of like a downgrade or at least a lateral move. But I think that the serviceability of the phone is just that much higher, so that the components that tend to really impact the user experience can be improved and swapped out and exchanged. And I think that really is just such a compelling vision and a product now, where people are always looking at, it's a year, I have to upgrade because I have to upgrade, not because there's any real deficiencies in the product itself.
Right, and so no, and that's another good point you brought up, right? Like, so a lot of our customers come to us and say, oh, 2E came out, so does that mean that now I'm gonna ditch my Teracube 1? They say, no, keep your Teracube 1. If you have friends and family who needs a Teracube 2E, then buy it for them. Or if you want to give your friends and family your own one, you do that, and then you can go buy 2E. Our intent is not to create a scenario where, like most of the other brands out there, whenever we release a new product, we ask our customers to go buy another phone in addition to what they have. That's not our intent, and we would never market ourselves that way.
Right.
As far as we are concerned, like our whole model is that we don't need everyone on the planet to buy a new phone every time we release a new phone. We only want people to buy the new phone when they have a need to buy a new phone. So for most of our customers, I'm hoping that they don't have to buy another phone from me for at least another 4 or 5 years, maybe longer. And we are A-okay with that. In fact, we would be very happy to support them that.
Exactly. And I think that is just such a, it's such a unique perspective, because it really goes against what people think is, the driving force, which is profits and product and, constantly just consuming. And I think that because looking at specifically the components of generation 1 and generation 2, it is so clear that this is not newer and better. This is different. And this is just a way to reinforce the message, which is that phones are phones, and they need to have basal level of functionality that is competitive with the mainstream market. It's not like you're producing something so off the beaten path, like there's other minimalistic phones out there. It's not really like that. It is really a mainstream product, but it just has the shell and the components and the ethos of a sustainability-minded company. And I think that, just like you said, you are going to be just as happy as having a new return customer in 4 years as you would in 1, if not happier, which is a usual thing to hear from, the co-founder of a company, because you think that, well, purchasing is dollars and dollars are good, but in this situation, maybe not so much.
From Sharad and I standpoint, and we are very much in law group agreement on this part, is that, you know, while obviously making money is important to sustain the company, but we're not out there to try to be like, you know, the next billionaire or what have you. What we want is to demonstrate that if these two guys out here can start a company and be environmental and make a positive impact to our society and community, you know, we hope that this could be a great lesson that other, you know, that inspire other people to take these, that to illustrate that, you know what, being environmental can actually start a business and can be profitable to, you know, at a point where it sustain the business. And that's exactly our goals and objectives. It's not out there. It's not like our mindset is not out there to be like, you know, make lots and lots of money. And the good thing is that because we are not a publicly listed company, we have the total control ourselves to make that destiny, or to call that destiny, right? And so, you know, I think it's important that right from the get-go, like, you know, him and I have a very strong, like, you know, in agreement for that. And I think from there it becomes the core, obviously the environmental as well. These two become basically the nucleus of Teracube. And then from there we build the layers around it. Okay, you know, what is the product? Okay, how are we going to sell it? How are we going to market it? How we make it so that it lasts longer? How are we going to support the customers? What kind of things we need to do in order to upkeep our 4-year promise? And you know, what about the software and things like that? And so start, you know, just layer upon layer, we start building up, and then eventually becomes the Teracube. And so,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to that aspect of warranty and serviceability, because I think that, you know, in my opinion, that's probably the most compelling thing about the phone, which is that it straight up, you got 4 years. We're going to support you for 4 years. Being that you're working with Google and, you know, you have other platforms that you're sharing those components, how does Teracube honor that warranty, and what, you know, novel approaches have you guys taken to stand by that guarantee?
That's I'm glad you asked that. And in fact, we get asked that questions all the time, especially from like the Android enthusiast standpoint, right? They always ask, oh, why are you only giving out 3 years software update, you know, when you are giving out a 4-year warranty on the hardware? So, you know, our explanation to that is very simple. Right now, based on our understanding, or at least as accurate as of today, Google is only providing 3-year software update support. And so we're not bigger than, better than Google. We can't beat them, or at least not in our current ability of. And so we want to use that as kind of our base. Now what we're doing is that, you know, from the chipset perspective, we are currently using a MediaTek chipset. So we are working very closely with MediaTek and our manufacturing partner as well. And so, you know, once and we get hold of the source code for the kernel, for example, then we can start figuring out, okay, you know, after having that, owning the source code ourselves, you know, we can probably do more with it. And then, you know, of course, our long-term goal is that we want to extend our software updates to more than 3 years as well. But the thing is, it's no point to promise something that we know we couldn't at that time when we released Teracube 1. And in fact, for Teracube 1, the software update perspective was a huge lesson learned for both Sharad and I. It's basically a long journey that took us basically around a big, long loop. So finally, like, it wasn't until earlier this year, when I say earlier, more like April, May, that we really starting to get better traction in terms of us acquiring the source code. And now we are actually working with our developers. We have a team of developers. We are now developing the software updates ourselves, rather than relying on our manufacturing partner, which most brands actually typically, they do rely on the manufacturing partner to work with, you know, because they work in, day out with like MediaTek and Google and what have you. From our standpoint, we want to to take that burden on ourselves, because that way we have more control. And so we kind of dip our feet wet at this point and say, we are very committed, and we want to do the software ourselves. And being a software guy, both Sharad and I, we were like, okay, well, might as well start rolling our sleeves, work with our devs, and go figure it out. And that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And so Sharad, kudos to that guy. I felt honestly, he's been working extremely hard for the last several months, working with our devs and trying to for example, we are long overdue for the Android 10 update for Teracube 1, but we are working extremely hard at it. It's just that there was a lot of obstacles and things that it was just something that we didn't know, and we didn't realize, and there was a lot of, I don't want to call it politics, but it was figuring out how to actually acquire the source code was actually an art by itself. And to a lot of people who might not think that, oh, why don't you just ask or pay or whatnot? And we were like, we want to pay and we want to try to get it, but even then it wasn't as easy as it seems. So we have to go through a lot of hoops just to get that going. And then finally, eventually we have, and that's great. So now we can really put the foot to the floor and figure out, okay, how are we going to do the software and accelerate that update process. But now that we're starting to get the feel for it, we feel a lot more comfortable going forward, that we I think within the next year or two, we should be very comfortable to share with our customers that we could provide beyond 3 years software update support. So basically we're matching our hardware level.
That really seems like both a big financial and labor investment, to really start taking ownership and the licensing of all the kernels and underpinnings of the code to really be able to have that autonomy. That seems like a very intuitive and, like you said, cuts right to the heart of what's needed to really support the phone from the ground up. And that's crazy. I didn't expect necessarily that level of ownership, to be honest, because I wouldn't imagine that a smaller company like that would be able to have the resources to do that. But that's very impressive.
We from our standpoint, the way you look at Teracube from an outsider perspective, Sharad and I are kind of running it and making it happen is very, what I would call, unorthodox. And for good reasons, right? We want to streamline a bunch of, business operational processes, but at the same time, we're trying to make a breakthrough from a technology standpoint. And by technology, I'm not talking about rocket science, right? We are not Elon Musk trying to do SpaceX. We're not that. But, given the platform that exists today, how do we make it more enticing? How do we make it better appetite for customers who look for that, that they want to buy a device and they do want to intend to keep it for a long time. It's just that they want both the hardware and software support that they needed, and in order for them to continue to enjoy the device. Not every customers of ours are gamers, phone gamers, for example. So they don't necessarily need the absolute latest and greatest, fastest hardware to support them. But they will need the software, because the software provides that security, protection, right? And we understand that. So that's the reason why we are working so hard, both on the hardware and software level, because the 2 and 2 has to match in order to have a compelling, product that would attract customers of ours. And so. Exactly.
So, being that Teracube has that approach, what do you think are the avenues in the future for this company and for phone development implementation in general? Do you anticipate Teracube to continue in this set of kind of lateral, not so much revolution, but evolution of the design and the approach, or do you expect to branch out in other areas of technology or software or customer service or something that, can provide a greener option for clients and customers who are looking at that?
That's a very interesting question. Obviously we have a roadmap in mind, from the product, next generation products perspective. In terms of broadening our horizon, to what you were saying about like software or maybe customer service and whatnot, we are trying to, continue to be better, obviously, both customer support, like for example, at the very beginning when we launched Teracube One, we were saying, okay, free shipping only for United States. And then several months later, we were able to extend that to Canada. This time around for Teracube 2E, we extended further. Now we will have Singapore and several, I believe 6 or 7 European countries. So we are continue to thrive for better customer service. And that's definitely, and definitely will be a thing for us moving forward as well. But in terms of leveraging that and try to offer it to other means, like, maybe for other companies or what have you, that is something that we haven't really thought about and probably won't be, just because we want to make sure we do a very good job with Teracube One, because right now we basically have we have a very strong mission to showcase and to upkeep the promise of that 4-year warranty. We're not definitely one of those one-hit wonders where, oh, you released the Teracube One, okay, great. And then people were like, oh man, I wonder if that company is going to stick around. Maybe will, maybe not. Yeah, so what if they give me 4-year warranty, but if they fold it in 2 years, right? Okay, well now we're in year 2. Little bit more faith for some customers, and for those who bought Teracube One, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's really accelerating its reach and its impact, and I think it's certainly. But I agree with you. I think that every savvy consumer is in the back of their mind. They're thinking, well, is this a company that I'm going to be able to trust long term?
Right. I mean, if you look at it, right, there's so many new companies out there. And if you look at like crowdfunding in general, there's so many projects, so many things out there. And little, to be completely frank, little did we realize that like there are a lot of unpleasant experience out there as well. We thought most of those crowdfunding experiences were fantastic. Mm-hmm. Little did we know until we launch ours, based on the feedback and questions that we've gotten, we then look into and only realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot of unpleasant experience out there. And so, I don't blame the general, consumer market to be doubtful or to be skeptical about what we do. I don't blame them. And so, the only way we can prove ourselves is through actions. I mean, we can say all we want, but at the end of the day, if there's no proven track record, I mean, what gives, right? So, for our standpoint, we definitely take a lot of the, we understood the negativity, we understood a lot of the constructive criticism, but that actually, from our standpoint, it actually turns into a better driving force and say, you know what? We are not here to gouge people's money. We know that, and we know that deep inside our heart, right from the get-go when we formed Teracube. It's like that's not our purpose. Our purpose is actually to generate a genuine business with a strong conscience of being environmental. Mm-hmm. And with that core, we know we just have to keep at it. People can say all the things they want. We just have to stay put and do the best we can to illustrate that, we are a good business, that we have a very good intent to do good things for the consumers.
Do you mentioned Elon Musk and Tesla, and they have a different approach to their sustainability visions for the planet, and, kind of this high technology kind of, really pushing the envelope. Teracube, I think, has like you mentioned, a more grounded approach to kind of tweak and modify and revisit products that can be made better and more reliable and more serviceable, which really, again, can potentially reach even more people. Do you feel that Teracube's vision and its ethos, so to speak, is having ripple effects in other big tech avenues? Do you see other companies? I know Apple's no longer putting a charging box in with their phones to claim that they're being more environmental, but it seems, it doesn't seem quite the same level of commitment, of course, that Teracube has to that vision. But are you just starting to see with your interactions with other people in this space that you're making an impact?
That's something Sharad and I have discussed amongst ourselves, and we're like, it's great that if other big manufacturers and companies out there are starting to follow suit, does that mean it's going to create competition for us? Of course it does. But if the competition is meant for to be the better as in better for the consumer, more choices, as well as better as in better for the environment, then I think that's a great thing. Having choices is a good thing. Having competition from a consumer standpoint, I think is also a good thing, because that's where it drives like the excellence of improvement and the excellence of wanting to be better. And if we, Teracube, were to become stagnant, then we're going to get phased out eventually as well. So that becomes, again, the driving force, so that we're going to have to think about how we're going to be a step ahead the competition in order to continue to, to drive the strong message of sustainability, as well as delivering a profitable business that people can trust and rely on.
Exactly. I think that there is now some real, brand identity is so important in general, but I think it's pretty clear that Teracube has kind of created this niche within the technology space of providing a cell phone, consumer electronics, with the ultimate goal and vision of, from the ground up, being more sustainable. And I think that adds a level of value to the consumer now that I don't think was really present before. I do think that, I graduated college, I studied environmental science in 2007. And at that time it was, at least in my opinion, there were so many important critical milestones versus on, CO2 output or, different particulates. At that time, it was like, oh my gosh, this is such a critical and pressing issue. But it just hasn't penetrated the social zeitgeist as much. And I think that now, with everything going on politically in the US and elsewhere, in Brazil and, all this incredibly active, storm season in the Atlantic, I think that, there's just a lot more frequency and reminders that, our impact is catching up to us in some respect. And I think that having Teracube established itself as really a market leader in this space, I think is going to be an invaluable asset to the brand, moving forward. I think it's a really compelling story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, from our standpoint, it is very important that to continue to drive that strong message about being environmental and how, everyone ought to do something, for our planet, and it goes even beyond whether you're a Teracube customer or not. Even if you're not a Teracube customer, if there's a way that we can help educate the fact that, like, hey, if everyone can do something, bit by bit, how we can contribute more to make a sustainable ecosystem, I think that would be already a good win for us. From our standpoint, I think, think of Teracube is almost like a platform for us to really help to drive that message, along with other many great organizations out there. And together, let's try to amplify that message just a little bit more, so that we can reach more people, or reinforce those messages just a little bit more, so that people can understand and appreciate, hey guys, it's really time that we got to do something for ourselves, and in this case, it's for our planet as well.
Yeah, I just, you're really preaching to the choir here. I think that is really, again, what my goal is with this channel is just the same idea, little steps that people can take to amplify that message, to think about what decisions you can make every day that, maybe can, again, if extended off thousands and millions of those little decisions, in accumulation, can really start to make an impact. And I think that the concept of e-waste and thinking about the environmental footprint and life cycle of all of these products and how they're disposed and how they're broken down and, how they're harvested, whether it's the environmental impact of the materials themselves or the labor issues and humanitarian issues. I mean, there's just so much complexity, with that aspect of manufacturing and electronics in general that
Absolutely.
I think it's just so fascinating to see that you guys are able to achieve what you're able to do, so quickly.
I mean, in a way, we both feel very lucky to have started this journey, and how we were able to bring to the market, in a relatively short time. I think that was by itself, a huge accomplishment for us, and it's just so that now we can start just that little bit earlier to embrace the environmental and sustainability messages. Because like I was mentioning earlier, if we were to do the, more like a traditional true startup, you do R&D, you do testing, and then finally release a product. And by the time your product comes out and then you embrace the message, that's 2-3 years later. And that's just 2-3 years later that we would embrace that message as well, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that if there's a way we can accelerate and start doing the message now, why not? So
yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what makes Teracube such a compelling business model, is that you're able to achieve so much in such a constrained period of time by just utilizing the right type of balance with R&D and refinements and building off of your own kind of just brains and brawn. I mean, you guys bring so much to the table together as a foundation. I think that really kind of gives your company, a real unique advantage, as opposed to other industries where you might have, someone who might only have a perspective of, environmentalism, for example, or only on the software side. And then you bring in some venture capitalists and they throw money at the thing. And then it just ends up being this really complicated and, you start really diluting, I think, the ultimate goal. And that doesn't seem to have been the case at all with you guys. And it's really commendable.
Yeah, no, from our standpoint, right? Like, we understand that, like, people are just not going to be environmental just because we release an environmental fund. I mean, definitely the people will do that, but based on the research that we've done, that would be a very small niche from a market standpoint. So then we from our standpoint, we got to make our product appealing to the general market as well. And from there, we educate, we slide in the value and the messages of being environmental, and hopefully we could persuade them that this is the right thing to do, and this is not only the right thing to do from our planet, from our environment and community standpoint, but also good for the wallet too. Like you said, at the beginning, what's in it for me? What's for my bottom line, right? Hey, if it costs me less and yet I can help the environment, sure. And then eventually they realize, okay, actually the environment is important. Even if I have to pay a bit more, maybe I will.
Right.
But I got to be able to see that value first. And so from our standpoint, that's where we are. We are at that point, is that we have to first illustrate that the consumer value and then tag on that environmental message. And then hopefully, through time, the 4 year, especially when they have to use the warranty and whatnot, then they were like, oh man, these guys are the real deal.
Mm-hmm. They deliver.
Yeah, this is what it means to be environmental. Now I get it. Okay. Well, it's not so difficult to be environmental. I'm environmental, and I don't feel like I have to do a lot. And if we can get that message across and embrace it, then I think we have the thing we need to do.
Exactly. It's hard to say that you've won, because this is not a battle that we're all going to win anytime soon, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And I think that is really just the, again, the alignment between, our our shared vision of very different scales, but the idea that, small steps that save you money today will ultimately be better for everyone. But I think that the challenge with environmentalism, theoretically on the whole, is that we haven't really priced in at all really what the adverse consequences of not taking these steps now truly are. At least in my opinion, and I think in a lot of economists' opinion, I don't think we've really been able to really put a environmental impact and a financial impact on what largely these decisions, when not taken today, will yield. And that negative pricing, is important to consider, which would be added value, like you mentioned. If people can incorporate that, then maybe they'll pay a little premium now to forestall these inevitable negative impacts. But because people don't think that way, I think that having an affordable phone now that they can see and research and look at and say, oh, this is just like my other phone, but it's green, why not? And it lasts 4 years, why not? It's something that they can jump on right away.
Right, and I think a lot of it, of what you just said too, I think it has to do with like how the market has been educated over the years, right? It's a very good, in this era, it's very much like a consumer era, right? Where all the brands and manufacturers want to encourage people. It's like, oh, you don't need it, you toss it, you get a new one. I want you to do that because you buy more. You buy more from me, and also I can sustain my factories because I need to maintain the throughput from their manufacturing so that I can keep them. So I can keep them around, keep my costs down. Yet my job now is to make sure I continue to have consumers to buy, so that I can keep my money running. And so that mindset is basically to create that whole syndrome where people are constantly don't even think, and they're just like, oh, my t-shirt's got a slight toner. Oh, I'm gonna throw it away. I'm just gonna get a new one. It doesn't cost that much. It's a couple of dollars of t-shirts. It's cheap.
Exactly.
You look back, way back when, the t-shirt party would be like $20, $30, and they'd be like, oh my God, I'm gonna make sure I sew it back on because it's expensive. Mm-hmm. That mindset has shifted so much that now, trying to go back trying to swing the pendulum the other way around, it's obviously we're at a very, very early stage. Once the momentum build up, then the pendulum swing will be a lot more smoother and better. But it will take time, and it does take time. But we feel like, this is where we want to team up with a lot of the great organizations out there who are, working so hard to embrace that message. And we want to be with them. We want to ride alongside with them and convey that message through our way. Through our way would be like, what we're good, leveraging what we're good at, which is okay, software and hardware and consumer electronics. And we do that, and then we're going to attach it with a very strong environmental message so that people can get and say, okay, these guys produce phones, but they kind of know what they're doing. They have the background. They can, we trust them that they can produce the hardware and software. Okay, now they're adding the environmental message. Okay, well, does it make sense? Well, let me see. I'm going to use the phone. Okay, well, that's last me 4 years. Well, okay, that's good. So. Mm-hmm. Now I'm more willing and trust these two guys and say, next time around when I'm going to talk, when I'm going to pull out my phone and then someone asks me about it, I'm going to be more comfortable to mention these guys, because if it works for me, I hope it will work for you too. And so that's kind of like where everything is, as of how we kind of think about like Teracube, in the longer term. What does it mean for us? What does it mean?
Exactly. Where the product fits in the general context of what you hope the consumers' preferences and choices, how they'll align so that they'll ultimately get the phone when they need it. So
exactly.
So speaking of, we should just mention for our viewers out there, I've ordered mine from Indiegogo, and while I don't need it yet, I may give it away to someone who does, because I'll keep my phone as long as I can. But if you're looking to purchase the Teracube 2E, how would they go about doing that? I know you mentioned Indiegogo, so.
Right, we are currently still available for pre-orders on Indiegogo. We just finished our campaign, so the great early bird deal is no longer available. But the fund price right now, I believe, is $139.
I think 139 when I saw it last.
139, I believe, is the current price. I haven't checked lately, to be honest. Because I've been busy with a few other things. Like now we're kind of trying to move into the next phase. It's like, okay, making sure like we have all the support and continue to working on the, now the delivery of
all the logistics. Yeah, I was going to ask, do you anticipate, I mean, I've had some of those negative experiences with Kickstarter campaigns in the past, and do you anticipate any delivery hiccups or logistical delays at this time?
We are not, we are very positive about it. Like last time too, like, there was a lot of skepticism and people were so worried about like not getting the phone or being delayed. And so like anything, that we say, they take it very seriously. And sometimes maybe from a negative standpoint, which again, we don't blame them. It's just that like, we never realized until we've run our first crowdfunding event to realize that there was so many, not so many, but there were lots of negative experiences. And so that's the reason why it creates that problem where people have become skeptical about things. From our standpoint, we are extremely transparent with our customers. Last year after our campaign finished on Kickstarter, we literally write a backers update every 1 or 2 weeks. We share with them whatever we know as late as the time we write it. And
sure.
This time around will be exactly the same. There's going to be no difference whatsoever.
Great.
From our standpoint, the good news is the software is very finalized. And I think, in fact, if we were to compare the two schedules, stacked on top of each other, from a software standpoint, we are definitely ahead of the game this time around.
Good.
Yeah, we're getting it. We are working to get it the Google certification now. So last time around, I think it took a little bit longer than that. So this time around, we're ahead. We placed the order earlier this time around as well. So that seems to be ahead of schedule. Based on everything that in our control, we try to do things a little bit earlier just to be ahead of the curve, so that we can promise keep our promise of our delivery and so on and so forth. But obviously there could be unforeseen, especially with this year, there's COVID and whatnot, and now holiday seasons. What tells, we don't know. But based on what we know and based on what we are in control of, we are doing everything we can. And in fact, from our standpoint, we are a little bit ahead of the schedule, actually.
Oh, that's wonderful. So still anticipated by the end of this year for delivery for most of the phones?
That's the intent, yes. So last year, we just missed the December ship date, so end up to be January, and we were very forefront about that. That's why this time around we're trying to accelerate everything a little bit earlier so that we can ship by December, because I understand it's the holiday season and it makes sense, and so.
Well, I think with everything going on in the world right now, I think most people will understand a couple of weeks or even a few months of delay. But I think as long as you're transparent about the timetable and where things are progressing, I think consumers will understand.
Yeah, like I said, we are extremely transparent. On our forum, both Sharad and I, we answers a lot of the questions ourselves. We work with our clients, and to us, it's a great segue to get customer feedback. Reading those forum articles, it's by itself, to our standpoint, it's exactly the feedback that we needed in order to figure out, where the gaps are and how we can better, to improve our, whether it's customer service or product or software or anything else that needs to make Teracube an even better company.
Well, I have no doubt that you and Sharad will be able to steer the ship in the right direction. I really look forward to getting my hands on the phone, and I will certainly be doing a review on this channel as well, just to spread the word and the message. And I really commend what you guys are doing at Teracube, and just the fact that you were able to do this as well as all the other endeavors that you've had your hands in. It's a very, very impressive resume for sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So this was a real pleasure. And is there any final words you'd like to add at this point?
No. I think, you know, we are going to continue what we do best, and you know, we are going to continue to drive Teracube to a greater height for the future. We're not going to stop here. Like we said, we wouldn't stop last year, and we're not going to stop here definitely for sure this time around either. We're going to continue to prepare. We're going to continue to figure out how we're going to produce and design, you know, better consumer electronics, you know, in the future, for sure.
That's really wonderful to hear. So, Anthony, I really thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this opportunity to get to know you and to learn more about, you know, all of your great endeavors. And yeah, I look forward to you know, seeing more from you in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure to talk to you today too.
Have a great day. Thanks again.
You too. Thank you.